This is the third demo of Dex, and in this demo I'm going to basically cover some of the loose ends, some of the other components that I haven't covered so far. So I'm going to start off with some basic charting, and I'm going to create an artificial data set in this case. Drag a Groovy script over here, and I'm going to load a script that I have sitting out here already. And let's see, I think it's going to be, let's see, this one called bar chart data. So this guy is going to create 4 columns, month value 1, 2, and 3, and it's going to be these values indexed by month. So again, get in the habit of doing this. I'm going to drag a view data component over there, execute, and the data looks about like I expected. Drag a bar chart component over, execute that, and go ahead and select month, and then I can view this particular value, that value, or this, or all three at the same time. That looks pretty good. I can change the X title, Y title, chart title, and I can move those things around to the left, to the right, to the bottom, or back to the top again. Same thing for the legend. So for the pie chart, go ahead and execute it and graph the month versus the value. Value 3, value 2, value 1. Change the title. Turn the legend on and off. And move the legend to the top, to the left, or to the right. Turn it back off again. Alright, so next I am going to load a new script here. And in this case I'm going to load a parabola. So it's going to go from negative 100 to 100, and it's going to fill the array with the iterator times itself. So x squared, actually I can make this a little more readable than it is. So x goes into here, so we'll turn that into x, and then x times x, and get rid of the pie chart and take a look at the XY chart. I have an error. This is probably a good thing to show. Let's see, what is the issue here? Alright, so data is I need to finish that, conclude that with a bracket. Okay, so go ahead and execute and graph x versus y. We see the parabola, that looks good. And let's go ahead and throw another view over here. So let's take a look at the parallel lines. Drag that over here, execute, and then we can see x versus y. X squared is going to be 10,000, and you can verify it down the line. 0 squared, I guess that's probably going to map to 0 if I could follow it. Now let's add a third column here, and let's go over here and call this x times x times x. Go back to parallel lines, and this is a nice thing about it because parallel lines can show a lot of numerical data relationships all at once. So here we can see 100 squared is 10,000, 100 to the third is going to be 1 million. And it's kind of pretty too. And we can go to the XY chart and we can see y. We can take a look at z. That looks right, and then we can see y versus z. So that is about like we expect. And then we can go into some kind of crazier views for this kind of data. Not sure how this is going to work out, but let's take a look. That's what exploring data is all about. So execute that, and in this case, this is a swing component, so the windows will pop out because it doesn't integrate natively with Java effects. So here we can see the two-tier relationships, negative 72 squared, 5184 to the third is negative 373,248. So we can dig into as many hierarchical relationships as we care to, and we can take a bird's eye view of it. That's what we see. And let's see, is there anything else to show here? Let's see. Well, we have a groovy filter. Groovy filter is kind of an interesting view as well. It's pretty powerful. So this is a tool by which you can decide what to include or what to exclude. So here we have a ton of data. We have X from negative 100 all the way down to 100. So let's say we wanted to filter values. By default, we're deciding to include everything by default. So I hit execute here. Oops, let me disable that. And we can see all the XYZ values. So if I wanted to change the filter here, and I wanted to say maybe I want to take only even numbers, I could say if or integer.parse int x, because by default, or column x, mod 2 is equal to 0. So crossing my fingers here, and it did not work out. Let me just try a simple one here. Oh, I've got my quote is not matching here. So let me try that first, and I see I did get x is equal to 2. So I'm going to change this over to mod 2 is equal to 0, and hopefully I get only the even numbers here. So negative 100, negative 98, negative 96, so that looks pretty much good. So maybe I want to thin it out, and I want to say that I only want even numbers from 50 to negative 50. So add another condition here, and don't want to type that again. So that is greater than negative 50 and it's less than or equal to 50. And I need to put this in parentheses. Then apply that, and I can see that I got what I wanted. Even numbers from 50 to negative 50, and then I can visualize that in different ways, like the XY chart. Whoops. Double click that and get a different view of this data. That looks good. And maybe even go into things like the bubble chart. So let me disable the XY chart and go ahead and execute again. And I'm going to put X on the X-axis, and I'm going to put Y on the Y-axis, and that looks like the parabola I expect to see. But then I have two extra parameters here. I have bubble size and I have opacity. So let's map bubble size to the Z-axis. So we can see it increases as this is increasing. And then I want to map opacity also to the Z-axis, or let's map it to the X. So, and that's what we expect to see. It increases as X becomes larger. So we can play around with the effects of the opacity and make them very light to invisible to very dark. And we can also vary the bubble size. And let me go somewhere in the middle here. And we can also graph multiple axes at once. So if we wanted to be able to take a look at multiple parameters at once, then we'd be able to do it by selecting multiple y-axes. You can only pick one x though. And that about wraps it up for this tutorial.